Today's book selection is The Death of Expertise, The Campaign Against Established Knowledge and Why It Matters by Tom Nichols. According to Nichols, education, instead of breaking down barriers to continued learning, is teaching young people that their feelings are more important than anything else. The media, mired in competition at every level, now asks consumers what they'd like to know instead of telling them what's important. And the internet is a mixed blessing, a well of information poisoned by the equivalent of intellectual sabotage. Our reviewer today is Dr. William Wallace Dessler, President Emeritus of Rochester Institute of Technology. Dr. Dessler served as the 9th president of RIT from 2007 through 2017. He received his bachelor's degree from the Stevens Institute of Technology and his applied physics PhD from Cornell. As president, Dr. Dessler was responsible for one of the nation's leading research and career-oriented universities, serving 18,700 students, 124,000 alumni, and overseeing $73 million in sponsored research and an endowment of more than $750 million. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed guest, Dr. Dessler.
Whoa. I told you not to do that. I asked her not to do that. I don't like these long introductions. They embarrass me. This is the book. Okay? The Death of Expertise by Tom Nichols. Tom Nichols is a professor of national security affairs at the U.S. Naval War College and the author of several other books on foreign policy and international security affairs. Now, although parts of this book drive me crazy, I think this is an important book. The book has a basic premise that a perfect storm of contributing factors has led to us to abandon decisions made based upon the opinions of educated experts in the field and replace them with decisions made based upon misleading, false, or even non-existent information coming from uninformed sources. I believe this premise is sound, and I agree with the author that our collective course is best set by using the best available information at the time. That seems obvious, doesn't it? The author cites a number of contributors to this situation. These include human nature itself, the emergence of the internet, the weakening of professional and educational standards, the decline of reliable journalism, the difficulty in identifying true experts in a particular field, and even the experts themselves. And let me discuss each of these in turn briefly. The author first treats the reader to a fascinating discussion of why we reject expertise and all want to only receive information that supports our point of view. I'm sure none of you feel that way. He cites studies that show that the dumber we are, the more confident we are that we are not dumb. And studies that demonstrate confirmation bias in the best of us. He reminds us that our willingness to ignore statistical evidence, if it suits us, is strong, and to accept as plausible the wildest conspiracy theories. He notes that, quote, "What better sign of a really effective conspiracy is that there is a complete lack of any trace that the conspiracy exists. Facts, the absence of facts, contradictory facts, everything is proof," unquote. And he reminds us all that this makes conversation on controversial topics both difficult and exhausting, and actual problem solving almost impossible. From there, the author notes that the internet has revolutionized our access to information. Whereas previously obtaining information involved either reading newspapers or news magazines, interviewing experts in the field, or doing painstaking searches in libraries like this one, or original sources. The internet has put at our disposal an almost unlimited and instantaneous amount of information from sources all over the world. The problem, of course, is that this source of information has in general not been vetted by those in the know, and much of it is unreliable as a result. Whereas previously, we took comfort in the fact that news organizations double-sourced controversial stories and that books were routinely read prior to publication by experts in the field, we now have no guarantee that internet information has been reviewed by anyone prior to posting. Yet many of us, young and old, and me too, continue to rely upon the internet for information of all kinds. The author then enters into a lengthy discussion of how colleges and universities are part of the problem and attributes the increasing numbers of underqualified experts to a lowering of educational standards and a proliferation of PhD granting institutions. The public's faith in expert opinions, he argues, has been steadily eroded by individuals claiming to be experts in a particular field when they are actually not experts at all. We have, he claims, too many colleges and universities, too many faculty, and too many students to maintain educational standards. And he is especially critical of small colleges that he feels do not have the resources to support real scholarly work and nevertheless offer advanced degrees to increase their reputation and to stay competitive. More on that in a minute. The chapter on the demise of competent journalism focuses on the rapid decline of print journalism driven by cable TV and the internet, and the public's increasing tendency to read, listen, or watch only media sources that reflect their own point of view. This decline has dramatically reduced the number of actual journalists in newsrooms and lowered their average age substantially. These younger reporters, who don't have to be paid as much as the older reporters, often, he claims, do not know much about what they're writing about, and some don't even think that's a problem. The author also correctly notes the transformation of real news programming on radio and TV into infotainment programming, whether it be from Rush Limbaugh or MSNBC or Fox News or even the original broadcast networks. In many of these media outlets, the experts are selected almost entirely to support the social and political agenda of the outlet. And finally, the author focuses on the experts themselves. Too often, he states, experts fail to make clear that while they provide informed input to policymakers, the policymakers themselves are usually elected officials who may or may not take their input seriously. In addition, he argues, experts in a particular field opine on matters well outside their areas of expertise. I would never do that. Nobel Prize winner Linus Pauling's declarations of the life-extending benefits of vitamin C is a good example here. And he uses it to illustrate how far afield individuals can travel outside their areas of competence to the public's detriment. The author notes that many Americans misunderstand that while we may be equal under the law in our democracy, that fact does not mean we are all equally educated or informed, or that all opinions should therefore be treated equally. This seems obvious to many of us, but in a world in which experts are increasingly regarded as elitists who have never spent a day in the real world, the decline of their influence appears to be inevitable. In fact, what is striking about our current situation is not just that many have lost faith in experts, but that they are increasingly openly hostile to them. There is truth in all of this, and as I mentioned at the beginning, I believe the author's premise is sound. So why does this book drive me crazy? First, he is more than a bit of an elitist. He appears to see little value in academic institutions out of the Ivy League and a few others. And I'm not sure he would approve of the Morrill Act, which in the 1860s created universities in every state with the intention of expanding access to higher education to a much larger population. Now let me cite a few unvarnished comments from the text. Quote, technology, universal secondary education, the proliferation of specialized expertise, and the emergence of the United States as a global power in the mid-20th century all undermine the idea that the average American is adequately equipped either for the challenges of daily life or for running the affairs of a large country. Now, why universal secondary education would have this effect is a mystery to me. And who exactly should manage the affairs of our country? PhD degree holders? I hope not. I do agree, however, that we must do a better job of communicating the behaviors and skills of effective citizenship, especially to our young people. The author also states, quote, some educators even repeat the old saw that I learn as much from my students as they learn from me. And with due respect to my colleagues in the teaching profession who use this expression, I am compelled to say if that's true, you're not a very good teacher. Well, I was an award-winning teacher myself, and I believe that also ought to be true, if not for the specific stuff in my particular topical lectures, but in terms of life in general. And then he says, quote, faced with the competitive pressure from other schools doing likewise, some of these fledgling universities step up their game and add doctoral programs. And because those small schools cannot support a doctoral program in an established field, they construct esoteric interdisciplinary fields that exist only to create new credentials. Well, this last quote particularly galls me. Although RIT is not a small school, it is actually a very young university in terms of its bachelor and advanced degree programs. Many of you may not realize this, but RIT did not offer bachelor degrees until 1955. Okay? Now, RIT has just introduced a PhD in computational mathematics, reflecting the fact that the scientific stool now has 3 legs: theory, experiment, and computational modeling. Is this the kind of esoteric interdisciplinary field he is speaking of? Introducing such a program at an Ivy League school would be a real challenge given their tradition-bound curricula. And universities like RIT, inherently more agile because they rose out of their communities and the needs of their communities, can provide a real service to higher education by introducing such programs. And there are other statements in the book that seem to come from nowhere, such as, the purpose of science is to explain, not predict, which is simply not true. Or, the world probably does not need another Bill Nye the Science Guy weighing in on global climate change, which comes right after his declaration that experts need people who can explain complicated concepts in terms people can understand. All that said, I still think this is an important book. Although the book was published this year, or at least it says that in the cover, it is clear that it was written almost entirely before President Trump was elected. And there is scant mention of what I have come to refer to as the facts be damned approach now so prevalent in our political arena. The fact that prominent individuals can make undeniably false statements and repeat them enough that they gain a measure of credibility in our society is troubling. What's more, the absence of any substantial public rejection of these statements reflects not only ignorance on the part of the general public, but a real antipathy to those in the know. Politicians who used to be held accountable for obviously false statements now simply double down on the falsehoods until they outlast the fact checkers, and what is false becomes a new sort of true. Alternative facts, to quote Kellyanne Conway. Well, this may be a good stopping point, and I want to close with a song I wrote about this particular phenomenon. I think it would be a fitting contribution to this review. I hope I can remember it. All right. That's probably a first, isn't it? Has anybody ever sung a song at one of these? Okay. Hopefully I can get this on without destroying my mic. Okay. Can you hear okay? Do you think the world is round? Do you think that down is down? Are you convinced that certain things are true? Do you think that red is red, that Mr. Flintstone's name is Fred? Well, if you do, I've got news for you. If I say it quite enough, I can claim the strangest stuff, and in the end, some will buy my point of view. And even though it isn't so, and even though it's just an act, I can make it true as alternative fact. Do you think what's said is said? Do you think Elvis is dead? Are you convinced that yesterday it rained? Do you think that ice is cold? Do you think that truth be told? Well, if you do, you can be retrained. Night is day and day is night. Rhinos really do take flight. Just keep on saying it and it can be made true. If 1 and 1 is really 2, and we all know that is exact, we can make it 3 as alternative fact. I am over 6 feet tall. I tore down the Berlin Wall. I am fluent in Spanish, French, and Dutch. I can run a sub 4 miles singing opera all the while. I always hit home runs in the clutch. Making up stuff is such fun. For office I should really run. Then everything I say is gospel truth and more. If now that we really know that truth should truly get the axe, from now on it's alternative facts. Thank you.